Hi class, and welcome to this lab exercise 16. This is on the digestive system, and I'll also share with you in an announcement the lab activity for today. Again, this is Monday, November 29th. I'm recording these because I'm out of internet. Well, I was a couple hours ago. Now I have it, it's back on. But to avoid confusion, I'm just recording these, and I will post you the lab activity link specifically during our lab time. So here we have digestive system. And we've been over this in lecture, but again, lab gives you a little more hands-on work to go over the aspects of the digestive system. And this is a really common model that we would have in our classroom, showing all the parts of the digestive system, starting in the oral cavity, showing the different parts of the pharynx, which is your throat, going down through the esophagus, the lower esophageal sphincter will open so that the bolus of food can enter the stomach where it turns into chyme. Then that chyme will enter into the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine, through the pyloric sphincter, then heading through the jejunum, the ileum, through the ileocecal valve, which will open to allow then the waste to enter into the large intestine or the colon. We have the cecum as kind of the blind-ended pouch of the colon. The appendix is the little appendage sticking out, which there's no known purpose for your appendix. The waste will be further turned into feces, traveling up the ascending colon, through the transverse colon, and then down the descending colon, through the sigmoid colon, and then out the rectum and the anus. So that's kind of the one long continuous tube of your digestive system. We have accessory organs, which are included in the digestive system, but which aren't actually labeled on this picture. Here we have the histology of the small intestine wall. And really throughout the digestive tract, it contains these three layers: the mucosa, the submucosa, and the muscularis externa layers. And then we have specifically these villi showing in the intestinal epithelium, the cells that will help to absorb nutrients that pass through your intestines into the bloodstream. You'll see these will be greenish in color if we've actually seen this model in person, but for you, they'll seem white. These are the lacteals. And remember that lacteals will absorb all the fats or lipids into the circulatory system. The submucosa contains kind of a muscular layer. The muscular mucosa is part of the mucosa layer. And then the muscularis externa is the third layer. Here we have various teeth of the lower jaw, first, second, and third molars. The third molar is known as the wisdom teeth. Many of us get those removed. The premolars, the canines, are kind of the pointed edge ones, and then the incisors will be the front, top, and bottom. The anatomy of the tooth, we have the enamel, which is the strongest substance of the body. That is the crowns. The crown of the tooth is the part that you brush or that you can see. The dentin is the area below the enamel, and that kind of gets us to the neck region, which is the part between the crown and the root. And the root is where we have all our blood vessels, the pulp cavity, the nerves. That's where you might have a root canal to fix parts of the root, depending on what is wrong with your tooth. Here are the salivary glands, the parotid gland, and the duct moving into the mouth, the sublingual and the submandibular gland. And again, all three salivary glands produce amylase, which helps to digest carbohydrates that you eat. Here are the two portions in the pharynx using your digestive system in bold: the oropharynx behind the oral cavity, the laryngopharynx behind the larynx. The nasopharynx is the part of the throat behind the nasal cavity, but normally food does not enter the nasopharynx unless you're laughing really hard and food comes out your nose. Here are the parts of the stomach: the lesser or smaller curvature, the greater curvature. The fundus is the portion of the stomach that kind of makes the dome-shaped, the body. The rugae are the inner folds of the stomach to help with kind of churning and absorbing churning the food and breaking it down. You can see the different muscular layers of the stomach wall. The pylorus is the end region of the stomach, right next to the pyloric sphincter. And then the cardiac sphincter is just another word for that lower esophageal sphincter as well. Here's another view of the gross structures of the stomach that you can see here. The pyloric antrum is kind of this triangular shaped structure before we enter into the pyloric canal. So again, use the virtual lab from Dr. Chuang's virtual lab link to practice labeling all these parts of the stomach as well. This each will show you the different muscular layers of the stomach wall, the outer longitudinal layer, the middle circular layer, and the inner oblique muscle layer. The lesser omentum, remember omentum, whether it's greater and lesser, depending on what side of the stomach it is. The omentum is kind of this bunch of connective tissue that holds the stomach in place with different blood vessels traveling through. Here we have the large intestine, or I guess we're still in the small intestine, the jejunum and ileum, and then we'll connect the ileum to the colon at that ileocecal valve junction. The colon is another word for this large intestine. So if someone with colon cancer has cancer of the colon or large intestine, and you can start to see how everything kind of connects together. So here's your jejunum, first part of the small intestine, or the duodenum is this first part of the small intestine, excuse me. Leading into the jejunum is like the upper 2/3 of the small intestine, and then the ileum is the lower third, then leading into the colon. Here we have a model of the liver, and showing the lobes of the liver from a front view, the different ligaments that hold the lobes together. The right lobe, the left lobe, and underneath the right lobe will have the gallbladder sticking out. Here's an inferior view, so looking at the liver from the bottom, we'll see the different blood vessels entering. The lesser omentum, again, is some connective tissue holding the liver in place. Here we have our gallbladder on the underside of the right lobe. Again, the gallbladder stores bile that the liver has created. So you can live without your gallbladder because your liver will continue to secrete bile. And bile, again, is important for emulsifying or digesting fats. This is a good picture showing the inferior view of the liver, but showing the duct system. And you should know this duct system well. Remember the gallbladder, the duct leading into the gallbladder is called the cystic duct. So I will highlight the cystic duct here. The duct going into the liver is called the common hepatic duct, and that will just divide into a right and left common hepatic duct as shown there. And then when we join our common hepatic ducts and our cystic ducts together, we form what we call the common bile duct. And the common bile duct is what will take that bile that's formed in the liver, stored in the gallbladder, whichever it comes down through, the common bile duct will take the bile into the small intestine so that that bile can find the lipids, the fats, and help to emulsify them and digest them. Here's the structure of the pancreas with the pancreatic ducts. Remember the pancreas has endocrine and exocrine functions. The exocrine functions are the digestive functions that produce all the digestive juices that will again enter into the duodenum, the small intestine, and those digestive juices help to break down proteins and other foodstuffs, whereas the endocrine functions are what produces insulin and glucagon to help control your blood glucose levels. All right, and then I think we get to the large intestine, showing the ascending colon that food travels through first. The hepatic flexure is near the liver. The hepatic means liver. The splenic flexure is near the spleen. So we have a transverse, a descending sigmoid colon will be kind of the S curvature. And then we have a rectum, anal canal, and anus. Here's the appendix again, which sticks out of the bottom of the cecum. The cecum is just a pouch at the start of the colon, and the appendix sticks out from it. No known use for the appendix, except if it gets inflamed, it could burst, and that means a lot of bacteria gets out into the surrounding tissue, which could be fatal. So if you do have appendicitis or you have a lot of pain in that region, please go get it checked out because it could be a fatal if it bursts. The tenea cholei is kind of a ring or once kind of line of smooth muscle that helps to kind of move along food or feces through the large intestine. And then the haustra are these individual kind of pouches of the large intestine, and each pouch kind of mixes the feces and then moves it on back and forth with the help of that tenea cholei muscle. Here's the model of the greater omentum. We also call it, it kind of looks like an apron. And if you ever dissect a cadaver, this is kind of neat to see. Once you open up the lower abdominal cavity, you actually have to kind of take the apron off to view the intestines below it. And again, the greater omentum helps to hold the intestines in place. It's a kind of a piece of connective tissue like an apron that holds your intestines in place, as well as serves as a passageway for all the blood vessels that are going to give blood supply to your intestines, and also absorbing foodstuffs from your intestines as well. So here's a look at the various membranes, pieces of connective tissue that hold the parts of your digestive system in place, as well as provide blood supply or a passageway for these blood vessels to travel through. Here's a look at tooth structure underneath a microscope, showing the tooth cavity containing nerves and blood vessels, the dentin, and then the enamel. So kind of a neat picture taken by Dr. Chuang, which is, again, he's the department head. He has done all the work for this class. So this is a look at the tooth underneath the microscope. And this is a look at the jejunum, the second part of the small intestine underneath the microscope, showing the three layers: the mucosa layer, the submucosa layer, with some of the muscular layers, and then the muscular external layer. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to show your lab activity, and I will put the lab activity link in the chat for you if you have lab today. If you don't have lab today, which is Monday, hopefully you're not even listening to this because you don't need to. But here's your digestive system activity. You just have to watch a 2-minute video and then answer about 5 questions for 5 points. Again, this week is lab pickup week, so the following week we'll go through your analysis kit. Thanks for listening, guys, and I hope you're all doing well.